Please. If you don't help me, I'll have to sleep in my car. With this storm, I might not make it till morning." The wind screamed like a wounded beast through the Oregon woods, slamming rain sideways against Jack's weathered cabin. His hand gripped the doorframe, knuckles white. Before him stood a soaked stranger, a woman drenched head to toe, hair plastered to her cheeks, voice cracking with desperation. "I have a little girl inside," Jack said, guarded. "I can't let just anyone in." But the woman didn't flinch. "I'm not asking for much," she whispered. "Just somewhere dry, just till morning." Behind Jack, a soft yellow glow flickered from a lamp. Emma, his daughter, was curled on the sofa with a book, blissfully unaware of the storm outside, or the one standing on their doorstep. Jack's gaze shifted to the rusted camper in his driveway, tilted in the mud like it had collapsed from exhaustion. He sighed. "Deep. You can stay. On the porch, not inside." The woman blinked, stunned. "Thank you," she said, almost in disbelief. She stepped inside the screened porch, shivering, dripping onto the floorboards. Jack handed her an old wool blanket. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sophie," she replied. "I'm Jack." Back inside, Emma looked up. "Who's that, Daddy?" "Just someone who needed a roof," Jack said. But deep in his gut, something nagged him. She wasn't just lost, she was hiding, and this storm wasn't the only thing she was trying to outrun. The storm howled through the trees as Sophie wrapped the old wool blanket tighter around herself. Jack had left her on the porch, dry but barely warm. The wooden bench beneath her creaked as she shifted. Tools hung on the wall beside her, and wind slipped through the cracks in the boards like whispers trying to get in. Inside, she could hear muffled laughter, Emma's voice, innocent and unaware. Jack reappeared moments later, towel in hand, hair still damp, eyes guarded. "Just wait out the night. I'll figure out your camper in the morning," he said. Sophie nodded. "Thank you. I mean it." He didn't respond, just gave her one last look and shut the door behind him. Alone, Sophie listened to the rain beat down on the tin roof, her breath fogging in the chill. She looked out at her broken camper in the driveway, tilted like a forgotten memory. The truth was, she hadn't expected to make it this far. And now, here she was, not in a hotel penthouse, not behind tinted glass, but sitting on a porch in the woods, being helped by a man who didn't even own a smartphone. The next morning brought silence. No more wind, no more thunder, just the wet hush of a forest recovering from the night's violence. Sophie stepped off the porch to inspect her camper, rubbing her arms for warmth. Jack came out with a cup of coffee and a wary glance. "Any idea what went wrong?" he asked. She shook her head. Lights flickered, engine coughed, and then nothing. Jack knelt beside the back wheel, now deeply embedded in soft, muddy earth. Tires sunk, axle might be bent. "I'm sorry," Sophie said, biting her lip. "I didn't mean to." He cut her off with a short wave of his hand. "I fix things. It's what I do." She blinked. "Would it be too much trouble if—" "No trouble," he said. "Not yet, anyway." Just then, the front door opened and Emma appeared on the porch, barefoot, her hair a tangled mess of curls. She stared at Sophie for a moment, then smiled shyly. "Hi," Sophie smiled back. "Hi. Are you going to stay long?" Before Sophie could answer, Jack's voice came from under the camper. "Emma." She giggled and leaned toward Sophie. "I think you should stay for breakfast." Sophie laughed. "Well, I might not have a choice." Inside, the kitchen was warm and cluttered. A kettle whistled on the stove. The scent of toast filled the air, and the walls were dotted with hand-drawn pictures and old Polaroids. Jack set the table with quiet efficiency, and Emma added a napkin at Sophie's seat, without asking. Over scrambled eggs and buttered toast, conversation stayed simple. Weather, the road conditions, how long it might take to fix a camper that looked older than both of them combined. "What brings someone like you all the way out here?" Jack asked finally. Sophie sipped from her chipped mug and shrugged. Looking for silence, I guess. Space. He raised an eyebrow. People don't run from noise unless something's broken. Their eyes met. She didn't answer. After breakfast, Sophie offered to wash the dishes. Jack hesitated, then nodded. Emma stood by her side at the sink, handing her wet plates like it was a game. "You're really good at this," Emma said. Sophie smiled. "I've done a lot of dishes in my life." Later, that day she swept the porch without being asked. She wiped down the camper windows. She helped Emma with a spelling worksheet, reading aloud with a calm, clear voice that didn't belong to a woman lost in the woods. It belonged to someone who once led rooms full of people. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep under a pile of mismatched quilts, Jack found Sophie sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in the same wool blanket. "The camper's a mess," he said, nodding toward the driveway. "It'll take time." "I've got time," she said softly. He studied her. "You really don't have a phone?" "No," she answered. "Technology complicates things. So do secrets." His jaw tightened. "I didn't say you had any." She didn't respond, just looked out at the trees, at the night sky barely visible through the pine branches. After a long silence, she added, "I'm not here to hurt anyone." "I know," Jack replied, "but I'm starting to wonder what kind of woman travels alone, reads like a professor, cooks like a chef, and talks like a CEO. For the first time." Sophie flinched, just slightly, then she smiled. "Maybe I used to be someone else." She stood and walked back inside. Jack stayed on the porch, staring at the camper bathed in moonlight. Something was off. Something she wasn't telling him, but one thing was certain: this woman wasn't just passing through. The days that followed unfolded like a quiet rhythm neither Jack nor Sophie had expected. The storm had moved on, but she hadn't. Her camper remained in the same place, tilted, immobile, broken. And yet, Sophie didn't act like someone desperate to leave. Each morning, Jack found her already up, sipping coffee on the porch steps, wrapped in that same worn blanket. She helped with breakfast, folded laundry, swept the front yard without being asked. She even repaired a loose hinge on the chicken coop like it was second nature. Emma was smitten. She followed Sophie around like a duckling full of questions and giggles. One afternoon, Sophie taught her how to make pancakes shaped like stars. Another, they painted small rocks with glitter and smiley faces and placed them along the garden trail. Jack watched quietly from a distance. She moved with grace, efficient, composed. Too composed. There was a polish in the way she spoke, the way she smiled at strangers during their Saturday market run, the way she read bedtime stories like she was addressing a crowd. It wasn't just kindness. It was control. That night, while Emma snored softly in her room, Jack and Sophie stood side by side at the sink. The house was silent but for the soft hum of the fridge and the trickle of water from the faucet. "She's a good kid," Sophie said, handing Jack a damp plate. "She is," he said, drying it off. "Like her mom." Sophie looked up. "What happened to her?" Jack paused, then placed the dish aside. "Emily, she was 29 when she died. Drunk driver. She was on her way home from her first day back at work after maternity leave." Sophie's voice was gentle. "I'm so sorry. I was working too much back then. Thought I could do it all. Job, fatherhood, grief. But life doesn't care about what you think you can handle." She didn't speak, didn't interrupt, just listened. "I quit my job, took odd repair gigs, sold the car, sold everything that didn't fit into survival." He gave a wry smile. "Guess that's how I ended up out here, in fixing things other people don't want to deal with." Sophie leaned against the counter. "And what about her?" she asked quietly, nodding toward Emma's room. "She remember?" Jack shook his head. "Bits and pieces. Mostly the stories I tell. There was a pause, long enough that Jack glanced up and caught Sophie watching him with a kind of admiration he hadn't felt in years. "It's hard," she finally said, "raising a child alone." He studied her. "You talk like you know." "I've seen it," she replied too quickly. That answer made his instincts itch. He didn't press, not yet, but something about her timing, her phrasing, her uncanny ability to avoid direct answers kept him on edge. That night, when the house had gone quiet, Jack found himself back outside with a flashlight, crouched beside the camper. The axle was worse than he thought. Fixable, sure, but it would take time. He had just started scribbling notes on a scrap of paper when Sophie appeared beside him. "How's it looking?" she asked. Jack didn't look up. "You're not going anywhere soon, unless you want to pay for a tow truck." "I'd rather stay," she said softly. He finally turned to her. "You really don't have a phone?" She shook her head. "Technology complicates things." "So do secrets," Jack muttered. She didn't flinch. "I'm not running from the law, if that's what you're thinking." "I'm not thinking anything," he said. "Yet." She looked down at her hands. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." "I know that," he said, voice even. "But I've seen a lot of people come through this part of Oregon. Drifters, seekers, folks with nothing but stories. You're not like them." Her brow lifted. "How so?" Jack leaned back against the camper, arms crossed. "You read like a professor, cook like a pro, and talk like someone who's used to being listened to." Sophie's smile flickered. "Maybe I used to be someone else." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Used to?" She didn't answer. She just turned and walked back toward the house, the porch light casting long shadows across her back. Jack stayed behind, staring after her. Whatever her story was, it was layered, carefully constructed, buried beneath practiced warmth and perfectly timed silences. And deep down, he knew Sophie wasn't just hiding from a storm, she was hiding from the world, and maybe, just maybe, from herself. It happened on a lazy Saturday morning, the kind where sunlight filters through dusty windows and the whole world seems to move just a little slower. Emma had taken it upon herself to explore the attic, a creaky space above the living room, filled with forgotten boxes, old Christmas lights, and stacks of yellowed books. "Don't break anything," Jack warned from the yard, "and don't fall through the ceiling." "I won't," she yelled back, already halfway up the pull-down ladder with a flashlight in hand. Sophie was in the kitchen, humming softly while peeling potatoes. The air smelled of rosemary and garlic. Jack was beneath the camper, tightening bolts, trying to stay ahead of the creeping sense that their quiet little rhythm couldn't last. Then came the sound that changed everything. "Daddy!" Emma shouted from above. "You have to see this!" Jack sighed, rolled out from under the camper, wiping grease off his hands as he made his way inside. Emma came bounding down the attic stairs, waving a crumpled magazine like it was treasure. "Look," she said breathlessly, shoving it into his hands. "It's Sophie. She's on the cover." Jack froze. It was Forbes, an old issue but still glossy. On the cover was a woman in a sleek designer gown, hair sculpted, eyes fierce. The headline read, "Alexa Morrow, Fashion's Young Queen, Billion-Dollar Visionary." The same eyes, the same smile, the same woman who was now barefoot in his kitchen, humming over a pot of potatoes. Inside, Sophie, no, Alexa, kept humming, completely unaware. Emma danced past her, holding up the magazine. "You're famous." "Why didn't you tell me you were famous?" Alexa froze. The knife slipped from her fingers and clattered into the sink. Slowly, she turned. Her face had gone pale. "Where did you find that?" she asked quietly. "In the attic," Emma said, pointing proudly. "Daddy keeps all kinds of old junk up there." Alexa looked past her, to Jack, standing in the doorway, holding the magazine like it burned his hands, their eyes locked. "Mind explaining this?" he asked, voice low. Alexa slowly wiped her hands on a towel, methodical, almost rehearsed. "I was hoping you wouldn't find out this way," she said. Then nodded once, like there was no use hiding anymore. "Yes, my full name is Alexa Morrow." Jack stepped into the room, setting the magazine on the table between them like a piece of evidence. "You want to tell me how a billionaire fashion mogul ends up in my driveway in a rusted-out camper under a fake name?" Alexa sat down, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she looked small, not composed, not graceful, just tired. "I started my company when I was 26, she began, from my tiny apartment. "I was broke, obsessed. I slept 3 hours a night and lived on vending machine coffee." She gave a faint laugh. "Within 10 years, I had stores in Paris, Milan, New York. I was everywhere. Everyone knew my name." Jack didn't move, didn't interrupt. "I trusted the wrong people," she continued. "My CFO, my cousin. We were raised like siblings. He siphoned millions from the company, then blamed me when it all unraveled. Said I knew, said I helped." She looked up, eyes glassy. "The board panicked. Investors ran. Lawsuits started flying. My name was in every headline. Fashion fraud, fallen icon. No one cared that I was innocent. I was the easiest target." Emma sat quietly now, the magazine forgotten on the floor. "So I left," Alexa whispered. "Sold what I could, took the rest and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to remember who I was before I became a headline." Jack exhaled, long and slow. "Why not tell me the truth? Would you have let me stay?" she asked. "If I told you I was a billionaire in hiding?" He opened his mouth, then shut it. No answer came. "I wasn't trying to deceive anyone," Alexa said, voice cracking. "I wasn't planning anything. I saw your house from the road, and it felt safe. I needed that more than anything." Jack stared at her. The woman in front of him wasn't the one on the magazine cover. This one had calluses on her hands, mud on her jeans, and a child clinging to her side. She wasn't untouchable anymore. She was human. "So, what now?" he asked quietly. Alexa looked at him, tears threatening to spill. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I don't have a plan. For once, I don't want one. I just want to wake up and make pancakes. I want to read stories. I want to fix things, even if none of them are mine." Emma slipped off her chair and climbed into Alexa's lap, wrapped her arms around her neck and whispered, "You're still my Sophie." Alexa's face crumpled. She pulled the child close, burying her face in Emma's shoulder. Jack watched them for a long moment. Then he looked down at the magazine, glossy, cold, curated, and then back at the woman holding his daughter like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. Maybe, just maybe, she had finally found the place where she truly belonged. It started with a photo. Someone at the farmer's market had recognized her. Maybe not instantly, but enough. A woman in a sundress, hair tied back, handing a basket of apples to a giggling child. Her expression was open, natural, unmasked, and, unmistakably, Alexa Morrow. The photo hit the internet like a spark to dry leaves. By the next morning, her name trended across social media. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire fashion icon hiding in Oregon. Alexa Morrow found living with single dad and daughter, from runway to Rust Belt. Has she lost everything?" At first, Jack didn't believe it. But then the cars started coming. A sedan, then a van, then a string of SUVs with dark tinted windows. They parked along the gravel road like they owned it, like the cabin was a crime scene and Alexa was a fugitive. Jack opened the front door and was met with a sea of microphones, flashing lights, and shouting, "Ms. Morrow, are you staying with this man? Are you under investigation for financial fraud? Is this your child? Do you have custody?" Is it true you faked your disappearance? Inside, Emma screamed, "Daddy, I'm scared." Jack didn't hesitate. He scooped her into his arms, slammed the door, and locked it tight. Alexa stood. In the kitchen, frozen, her face drained of color. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't think anyone would." Jack turned to her, jaw tight, not with anger at her, but at what she'd brought to their doorstep. "We need to get them away from here," he said. "Now." She nodded, eyes wide. But Jack saw it in her. The decision had already been made. That night, the cabin was quieter than usual, but not peaceful. Outside, the reporters still camped like vultures. Inside, Alexa packed. She folded each item with precision, her fingers trembling as they slid the last sketchbook into her bag. "You don't have to leave," Jack said from the doorway, arms crossed. "Yes, I do," she replied gently. "You didn't ask me to go. I'll never forget that. But I can't let this ruin Emma's life. Or yours." "She doesn't want you to leave," Jack said. Alexa's voice cracked. "Neither do I." As she stepped outside, keys in hand, she stopped short. Emma stood at the bottom of the porch stairs in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear. "Where are you going?" she asked, voice small and broken. Alexa crouched down, pulling the child into her arms. "There are too many cameras, sweetheart. Too many people asking questions. I don't want you to be scared." Emma clung tighter. "I'm not scared if you're here." Alexa's heart cracked down the middle. "You don't have to be famous," Emma sobbed. "I don't care. I don't need a famous mom. I just need you." Alexa closed her eyes, pulling her in tighter. "You'll always have me," she whispered. "No matter how far I go, I'll always be your Sophie." Behind them, Jack stepped forward, placing a hand on Alexa's shoulder. And for a long, suspended moment, the three of them just stood there, held together by everything they'd built, and everything they'd now have to let go. Just before dawn, the camper rolled slowly down the dirt road, its headlights cutting through the mist. Alexa didn't look back right away, but when she did, the cabin was barely visible. Just a shape. In the fog, framed by pines, glowing faintly with the last warmth of what had been her home. She parked a few miles out, hidden beneath a stand of trees. The world was still. She stepped outside into the cold morning, leaned against the camper and cried. Not because she'd lost everything, but because she'd finally found something that mattered. And now had to leave it behind. Not fame, not status. Not her empire, but them. Emma's drawings taped to the fridge, Jack's quiet humor and hands that fixed more than machines, the warmth of pancakes, the squeak of old floorboards, the feeling of being loved, not for her name, but for her heart. She placed a hand over her chest, and in the silence that followed, Alexa made a promise to herself. She would come back. Not as a brand, not as a CEO, not to reclaim a throne, but to build something better. For them, for herself, for the kind of love that needed no headlines. The lights in the studio were bright, too bright. Alexa sat still in the high-backed chair, hands folded in her lap, her heart pounding beneath a plain navy blouse. No makeup, no jewelry, no stylist behind the scenes. For the first time in Billionaire years, she was just her. Across from her sat one of the most respected interviewers in American media, a woman known for asking the questions no one wanted to answer. 3, 2, 1. We're live. The red light blinked on. Cameras rolled. "Thank you for joining us, Alexa," the host said, her voice calm but expectant. "Thank you for having me," Alexa replied, her voice steady, soft, honest. What followed was not an ambush, but it wasn't easy either. Where had she been? Why had she disappeared? What really happened at Maro Atelier? Alexa didn't dodge. She didn't deflect. She answered each question with clarity and vulnerability that caught even the host by surprise. I trusted the wrong people, and I believed that power would protect me. That success made me untouchable. I was wrong. The studio was silent. The crew leaned in. Viewers across the country watched from their living rooms, some gasping, others nodding. When it all fell apart, I didn't know who I was without the cameras, so I drove. I broke down, and I ended up at a cabin in the woods, owned by a man who had nothing and still gave me everything. Her voice trembled, but she didn't break. He and his daughter lived with quiet grace. They didn't ask what I had. They just gave what they could. A blanket, a meal, a second chance. And who are they? The host asked. Alexa paused, smiled faintly. They're my family now. A beat of silence. And what happens to your company? Alexa's gaze didn't falter. I've filed to dissolve Maro Atelier, effective immediately. The host blinked. All of it? Every dollar, every patent, every property. I don't want to rebuild my name through fashion. I want to rebuild it through purpose. She reached into a folder beside her and slid an envelope across the table. This is the beginning of the Emma Foundation. It's named after the little girl who reminded me what innocence and courage look like. It's a non-profit dedicated to single parents, working families and children left behind by broken systems. The words hit like a lightning bolt. Across social media, hashtags exploded. Alexa Maro Emma Foundation. Redemption, not revenge. Backstage, in a quiet green room, Jack adjusted the tie of a second-hand suit. Emma stood beside him, fidgeting in a little blue dress Alexa had once designed, now tailored perfectly for her. When the segment ended, a producer opened the door. She wants to see you. No cameras, no microphones, just a room and a moment. Alexa turned as they entered and froze. Jack stood there like he'd always been, solid, steady, kind, with Emma beside him, beaming. You really did it, Jack said, voice low. I had to. Alexa whispered. For you. For her. For me. Emma didn't wait. She ran forward and launched herself into Alexa's arms. I missed you, she whispered, her voice muffled against Alexa's shoulder. I missed you more, Alexa replied, tears brimming in her eyes. Jack stepped closer. You didn't just fix your own life, he said quietly. You repaired something in us too. He held out his hand. Alexa took it. You didn't just repair that camper, he added. You repaired our hearts. Alexa pressed his hand to her chest. And you taught me what love really means, she said. It's not loud. It doesn't demand anything. It's just there, quiet, steady, true. And in that moment, no headlines, no stage lights. The only story that mattered was the one unfolding between the three of them. A woman who had once lost everything, a man who had chosen fatherhood over ambition, and a little girl whose love never cared for fame. Spring returned to the Oregon woods like a slow exhale. The pines swayed gently in warmer winds. Wildflowers burst along the gravel path, and the old cabin, Jack's cabin, no longer stood alone. Just across the clearing, a new home had risen. Modest, pale blue shutters, a wide porch, built with reclaimed wood and stitched together with something rarer than money. Love. And second chances. Alexa never returned to the mansion, or the penthouse, or the private jets. She didn't need them. She had come back to where her soul had been quietly rebuilt, in a kitchen with peeling cabinets, beside a garden planted with more hope than horticulture, and with two people who never asked her to be anything but real. Jack, Emma, and now, her. They shared dinners under string lights on the porch, lazy breakfasts with too much syrup. They laughed at each other's morning hair and competed in who could make the worst-looking pancakes. Emma usually won. But they didn't just rebuild their lives, they built something far bigger. With the first round of funding from the Emma Foundation, they converted an old barn on the edge of town into a community center. It had no fancy sign, just a hand-painted wooden plaque above the door, the Fix-It House. Inside, Jack taught single dads how to repair cars, patch drywall, and install light switches, skills that brought dignity as much as income. Alexa led creativity classes for kids, not fashion, not business, just dreaming, drawing, believing in what lived inside them. Emma called it the Dream Club. The center wasn't perfect. The roof still leaked when it rained hard. The heater clanked like an old washing machine. But laughter lived in its walls now. It was a place where teen moms learned to sew, quiet kids read out loud for the first time, tired fathers drank strong coffee while getting resumes proofread. And at the back of the property, under the shade of a maple tree, sat one more piece of their past. The camper. No longer broken, they didn't scrap it. Instead, Alexa and Emma repainted it together, lavender and soft yellow with stars and handprints across the doors. They lined the inside with bookshelves, cushions, and twinkle lights. It became the reading camper. Every afternoon, kids piled in, some to read, some just to be near someone who listened. Some came just for the warm silence. Alexa or Jack read to them, Emma too, when she felt brave enough. One evening, while dinner simmered in the kitchen and Jack tuned his old guitar, Emma came running in from school clutching a paper. My writing assignment. She beamed. We had to write about someone who changed our life. Alexa knelt, curious. Emma handed her the page. In her slightly crooked handwriting it read, My mom, Allie, didn't give birth to me, but she gave me other things. She gave me bedtime songs, drawing lessons, pancakes when she was tired, and hugs that made me feel like the most important person in the world. Some moms are born into your life. Some moms are chosen. I chose her, and she chose me back. Alexa didn't speak. She couldn't. Jack stepped into the room, read the paper over her shoulder, and wiped a tear with the back of his hand. Later that night, the three of them sat on the porch. Emma leaned against Alexa's shoulder, half asleep, a blanket around her. Jack strummed quietly, the notes soft as fireflies. There were no cameras, no interviews, no headlines, just three souls who had walked through fire and found each other in the smoke. A camper that once held a broken woman now held books and dreams. A cabin that once held only survival now held family, and a little girl who once just wanted someone to stay had finally gotten her forever. It started with a storm, a broken camper, a single father with grease-stained hands, a little girl with more kindness than the world often deserved, and a woman, once powerful, now invisible, standing in the rain, asking only for a place to stay, dry. She didn't bring money. She didn't bring answers. She brought silence, pain, a past that weighed more than gold. But what she found was love, quiet, uncomplicated, brave. Jack didn't need to know her name to help her. Emma didn't care about headlines. They gave what they had, blankets, laughter, second chances, and slowly, piece by piece, she stopped running. She cooked breakfast. She read bedtime stories. She painted alongside a child and fixed broken things that weren't just made of metal. She gave up a throne to build a table. She gave away her empire to protect a little girl who called her Mom. And when the world finally found her again, when the cameras circled and the past demanded a response, she didn't hide. She stood up, told the truth, gave everything she had left, and chose to start over not as a CEO, but as a human being. She built a foundation, not of stone or wealth, but of faith, family, and purpose. She taught children to dream, taught fathers to build, taught herself to belong again. In a world obsessed with fame, she learned to live for meaning. In a world that praised perfection, she embraced being enough. And in a camper that once broke down on the side of a dirt road, she found everything she'd ever wanted: home, love, and the kind of family that chooses you even when the world forgets your name. So if this story stirred something in you, a memory, a longing, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, healing is still possible, don't scroll away. Stay. Because sometimes all it takes is one open door, one cup of tea, one hand reaching back when you thought you were alone. And maybe that next story, it could be yours. Subscribe to soul-stirring stories, where truth matters, where hope lives, where every ending is just a beginning.